Hi there, welcome to the studio. This session is going to be an acrylic painting with figures in it. That's our theme on Patreon for the month. So I have a commission from a family who would like a portrait of their favourite holiday place on Fraser Island, which is a great sand island here in Australia, a really beautiful place. So they've sent me a photo of the sand island and they've sent me a couple of different photos of the family. And so it's my job to try and combine those into one photo. And one painting, one composition. What I've done is just take a whole lot of separate images in different sizes. You can see that's Dad and the boys fishing. These are pretty poor quality images because my printer was on the fritz. But I've got 3 different Dad and boy sizes, then I've got 3 different mum sizes and 3 different girl sizes. And what I'm going to do is I've worked out where I want them. I want the dad and the boys there, mum and the girls down here. So now all I need to do is take these and try and work out what sizes I want. So if I put Dad and the boys here, and then I want to take this larger mum and put her down here, maybe over there. And then I'll go for the largest girls I've got and pop them there playing in the surf. That would be roughly the way I want to have them set up. So if I make Dad smaller and the boys smaller, it makes a greater sense of distance in the beach. And I can do that making them quite small, and then you can see how it looks like the beach is much longer. I'm a bit concerned. I like the depth that's going to bring, but I'm a little concerned that then it'll be all the importance will be on Mum and the girls, and the poor Dad, for whom the present is going to miss out. So I'm thinking of actually making them that size. Then they'll be far enough away from here to give a sense of distance, and also so that the girls don't get caught up in the fishing lines that the boys are using. It's just time to transfer those images onto the paper, the canvas. I've already put in a wash for the sky and a wash for the sand and the sea that will be out here, and used a white charcoal pencil to give me some idea of where the major lines are going, just so I've got an idea. In fact, the girls are going to go more out like this, so Mum will be going up here a bit more. So then I put the boys there, and the beach actually continues back there, so I'll put some very tiny figures back there, and that will give me a nice sense of depth. So I'll just transfer those on before I start the rest of the painting, so I've got a guide. I will lose that image as I'm working on it, but putting it in there really helps me lock it into my brain where these people are going to be, and I will see some of the outlines. And how I'm going to do it, I've also done a whole lot of sketches of these people in my sketchbook. But I'm not going to use my sketches. What I'm going to do, now that I've got these the right size, is just use a transfer paper and transfer it straight off the photos of them so that I get them exactly right, because there are no real features to identify them by. All the faces are hidden. I want to get the shapes just right so that Mum and Dad will recognise them. Once I put them on there, I'll do the painting, I'll lose some edges, and I'll just refer back to my sketches and the photos to regain the bits that I lose. But that's the way I like to work when I'm doing commissions with small figures in the landscape. Here we are, back again 5 minutes later. I've got the figures in. I've just sprayed it with a little bit of fixative, and now they're ready to just wait there while I do everything else around them and then get back to doing them. And I think I've got the proportions right, but I can always repaint them later on if my client doesn't like that. Here I am, all set to go. I have the figures drawn in. I've got the horizon line taped off. I want a very precise horizon line on this one. As you can see by the reference, there's a very definite horizon line and a very dark strip of water on the sea. So I want to keep that very crisp there. I'm going to be putting in all those clouds. First I'm going to start with the little bit of clear sky that you can see where the rain squall is falling over. I'll put that in first, then all the clouds coming along there. Because she wants it in a landscape format, I'm going to have to extrapolate it out from the reference photo, so we'll see how that goes. my palette for this part of the painting. Let's get some light back on that. Ultramarine blue, some white here. A little bit of raw sienna dark, some burnt umber, a little bit of dioxin purple. You only need a small amount of that. And some matte gel. I'm going to mix that matte gel in to extend it and also to give it a little bit of structure. Just let's zoom in on this, and I'm going to start off with a very large brush, and I'm going to do this part of the sky here, which is going to be a little bit different than the rest of the sky. What I'm using for that is a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of aqua, turquoise, mixed with some white. So here I go, phthalo blue, turquoise mixed together with some white. I might need a little bit more of that. And that is going to be the small strip of lighter sky we can see there. I'll take a little bit of the matte gel, mix it in just using this nice big brush so I don't get too fiddly with the sky. And in that all goes. That goes right along the horizon, and I'll be putting a little bit of it up in here as well, just where it's going to peek through a little bit through the clouds. Take that right along, and you can see already I'm going over the figures that I put in, but I know where they are now and I'll be able to get them back. It becomes squall over here. I don't have to worry too much about that, but this area here I want to have quite a bit of that blue, lighter blue, so just put a little bit more in there. And that's why I gave it a sort of a turquoisey undercoat, because it has got that kind of feel to the sky, the clear part of the sky. Right, so that's going to be the clear, smooth part of the sky that the squall is going to come over. And then I'm going to start painting in the clouds. So the clouds are going to be a big mix-up of this. So I'm not getting too fussed about how I mix this up. I don't want it too mixed on the palette. So I'm going to start by just putting some of those in, and then I'll modify it as I go. So I just pick up a bit more purple and put in if I don't think it's purple enough. And the base of those clouds are very dark and heavy there, so they're going along there. Put those in. So still a large bristly brush, but not quite as big. And at this stage I'm just brushing the paint all over the sky and adding in bits of this colour as I go. I want to keep the darkest down here. There are many different ways you can do this. I could be using a palette knife. Here I'm going to just mix the colour up to give it a slight greenish tinge. A little bit of white to knock it back slightly. And I could be putting it in with a palette knife, which works quite well, just dragging it through there. And you can see I'm not mixing them up very much. I don't really want them to be super mixed. And here they come in. You can see it just gives you a more luscious cloud than just using the brush on its own. I can just pull those, get a nice... I can go back into them with brushes later on if I wanted to smooth out some edges. So right now I'm just getting the main body of it on. I'm going to put a little bit of the yellow in now, the yellow ochre, a little bit of purple, and a touch of white for this batch. And I just keep mixing it into previously mixed batches. It's a little bit lighter up this area, so you can see it's going on lighter. I want to cover right up to the top of the canvas, just swirling it on and letting it mix in with the paint that's underneath. Because it's thick, it's wet and I'm able to do that for a while. Lighter paint there is going to form the rain that's coming down there. It's coming right out of these clouds, so what I'm doing is just taking it and pulling it down like this. And see how it just looks like rain coming down over that lighter sky. Not worrying that it's hitting the tape there, because that's actually going to be something else there. So I'm pulling that rain all the way along here. I can just get my brush a little bit wet, which helps the whole pulling process. I want it to come all the way, those squalls come all the way down to the horizon. Very dark mix there, which is just going to go along the base of this cloud here. It's going to be that cloud coming along here, which is where this batch of rain's coming from. So I'm just working that and pulling it. See how if I just put a lot of paint on and then swipe it, it gets those moving cloud shapes. Now I can just carefully pull down a bit of that here. What I can do is take a little bit of the turquoise here, a little bit of turquoise on my brush, mix that into the brush, and as I pull it down, it doesn't look lighter, does it? That's what I'm after, that turquoisey look there. So let's put a lot of turquoise on the brush. If I've got it too dark, I can take a little bit of light white and pull that over here. I'm going to put in some lighter bits of cloud, so I'm just going to run some lighter bits coming through. And then the darker clouds will come over it, so I can go back into that. This brush, I can just tidy up some of those edges. And I can squiggle it around some of these areas up here, pull it out, use something a bit lighter. You can lift back into it with a cloth if you want to. I don't want this to be too bright. I just want some of that sky to show through the lighter cloud areas. And some of that light colours coming into there. So it's just a mix of using my palette knife and my brush at this stage. You can see you get different effects from using both of them. One's sort of scudding clouds and one's a little bit of the more blended clouds. Over here I'm going to have a much lighter patch of cloud, so I'll make that come in like that. Pulling it back down into this darker cloud, and then the darker cloud can get pulled back up over it too. And I'm not trying to exactly replicate the clouds that I see in the reference photo. I'm just trying to give the impression. All this area needs working now, so I'm going into that. Just mixing up on my palette a whole lot of dark colours. which will then get lifted a little bit by adding in a little bit of white to them. So that it gets a little bit lighter as it goes up. I mustn't forget to go around the sides. And sometimes I use my fingers, you can see here, because it's really good on those edges. And you can use your finger anywhere you like in your painting. It's a really good tool for getting certain effects. So here I've got that all done, and then I'm just going to go in with my finger if I want little bits of smudgy bits. Now time to put in the very bright dark line along there. It's just very thin, and it's going to go from just behind the people. And what I'm going to use is a mix of ultramarine blue and phthalo blue to make a very deep, dark, rich colour. And I've put the tape on again, and I'm just going to pull straight along that line. Just keep loading up the brush. So I want a very dark blue along the horizon line, very deep. And quite thin. I'll be using the acrylic glazing gloss now, just to put in some glazes for the water. And I'll be using cobalt turquoise and a straight turquoise, mostly the cobalt, and also some lemony yellow as well. So I'm just picking up a bit of the cobalt turquoise and putting in a bit of the glazing medium. Now you mix it about 10 lots of glazing to 1 lot of paint. You can see it just makes a very thin wash. That's why I put in that the Naples yellow underneath. I wanted it to show through. I'm going to have a problem there. I'm going to have to put something a little bit darker there, or I'm going to have to get rid of it, which I'm just doing now by scraping my finger through it. I'm just going to incorporate that into the wash. A little bit more of that. A little bit more medium. This is a gloss. I don't really want it to be too glossy on the people, so I'm trying to go around this a little bit. Well, actually, I'm just going to go over it and then I'm going to wipe it out. I think that will be easier to manage. So you just do a whole lot of layers of this. That's basically how it goes. As I'm coming down here, I'm starting to layer it around this way a little bit. So you've got a bit of a sweep of the right direction that it's coming in. And that, we'll just wait till that's dry, but in the meantime, I'm just going to give a little wipe on that body, because I don't want that to be glossy. So it's going to be much more opaque where the light is shining on it underneath this cloud. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of lemon yellow and a little bit of that, mix it up, so it's quite an opaque mixture, and that's just going to get dragged under across here. I might just go in with the straight lemon to start with. That's going to be a real patch of light on the water there, but around it is going to be this more this greener, more turquoise water. While you've been away, I've just put a couple more glazes of the turquoise across the water there, and I've put in the beach. I've just done those quickly because I want to concentrate on the figures with you, which are a bit time consuming. So the beach just goes in with a nice swathe of Naples yellow and some pastel pinks in there, and then a little bit of the sky reflecting, the bluer part of the sky reflecting there, and some of the warm pinks and purples down through this area of wet sand. So I'm going to do next Mum and the girls, and then I'll put in Dad and the boys back here, and some tiny people back here. So that's all gone in. Let's start with Mum. This is Mum. She's wearing black or navy there. The sun is coming from this direction, so we'll use that for the shadows. What I need to do now is just put out the colours I'm going to use for her and start the base colour of her skin tones. Here we are back again. What I've done for the figures is mix up some paint that's going to show us, describe the flesh tones. So I've just used here to make up a kind of mother mixture, some burnt sienna and a little touch of yellow ochre, and then to that I've added a pastel pink and a pastel yellow and some purple to give me all these tones down here for the flesh. So I'm going to now start on this person here and just rough in those colours. I've tested them on the piece of paper so I know what I'm looking for. And I'm going to start with this mother colour, and really that's going to go over all of the skin to start with, so that I've got a base. And then I can warm it up or cool it down as I want with the others. So here and at the bottom. Now it is going over that glazed area which is fairly glossy, so the first coat might not go on as evenly as I would like. But that's okay, I can fix that later. Here comes underneath her visor. So this is the face. And down the neck area. I'm just being quite careful about how I get that on, just to start to get the shapes in, and then we'll worry about the tones as we go. Just see a little tiny bit of her other arm there, and then we have her legs coming through here. So this is, as I said, the mother colour, so the base for all the other colours that all the other colours are made out of, and that keeps it being harmonious even though you're changing the values. In that all goes. And then I'll be working back over those areas with the different values of skin tones to give the highlight areas and the shadowed areas. It's all starting out with the same value. And I'll do the same with the two little girls here. So this foot is anchored on the ground. And that one's up in the air because she's walking. So here's the little bub down here. Actually going to mix a little bit more of the pinky colour to start these off in a little sort of softer version of their mum's flesh tones. But they've all been at the beach for a while, so they've all got a little bit of a tan going on there. Then this chubby little leg. And I don't want to lose the shapes of those legs there. And then the little arms. Her hand is just in front of her mum's leg there, so there's a little bit of overlap, which is important with figures. In this situation I didn't want to put the girls too far away from the mum. I wanted them to be joined in some way. That arm's probably going to go a little bit further down there now that I look at it. So I did, now I've made a mistake there because that is not flesh, just the hand that's flesh, because She's got on a long sleeved UV top. And I kind of lost the sense of that. That's okay, I'll paint over that. So I only need the hands to have the colour on. That's because I'd forgotten to look back at my reference. And then the sister has her hand around her back there. And so that will get done a little bit more carefully later on. And put her legs in. Foot again, this one firmly on the ground. And this is one way to show movement in your figures. Having a foot raised indicates action and movement. So in this one, the only figure with both feet on the ground is the little girl here. But her sister has one foot in the air as she... I've made it a bit like a paddle, so I'll have to deal with that. That foot's got a bit too big. I can fix that by just taking another brush with a little bit of water in it and cleaning up around the edge there. I'm really cleaning that whole foot off now because I've just made it too big, and then we'll work out how that goes. I think it's going to go over like this. There we go, that's more like it. And there'll be shadows that go in. This foot's got a little bit out of control there too. That's just coming off. You can just see how a little bit of water on your brush will take it off. And then the shadows that I'm going to put on underneath will really anchor them as well. There's a little touch of face being able to be seen under this one as well. So that's just getting a little bit of colour in. So now I've got all the skin tones of those figures there. I want to get the skin tones of the figures in the background too, so I just need to, working on dabbing the boys back here, I just need to use a smaller round brush because they're kind of quite small. And again, I'm just putting in some touches of colour where they're his skin tones are. Let's dab in under there, under his hat, down his neck there. And then other sun here. Coming in there. I'm just keeping the skin tones to that base colour there. Dad's legs going in. Other one there. Try not to make Dad look like he's standing on the balls of his feet. Angle those feet down. This one's coming forward so the toes are wider. And the last little bit of an arm there. So the next thing I'm going to do is put in the clothes, and then I can work on the skin tones around that. And I'm using quite small brushes for this, a small flat and a small round, just because this is all very loose, and then the figures are going to have a bit more detail. So you can be as detailed or as loose as you like with the figures. This is just my interpretation. I'm going to mix myself up a bit of ultramarine with a tiny touch of purple, and then maybe a little touch of burnt umber as well, to mix up a very dark sort of bluey, almost black blue. And that's going to be the clothes. Just getting that shoulder in. So with figures, it is important that you get the shapes right, because you know yourself how easy it is to recognise someone when you're walking down the street from a back-on view, because you know the shape of that person. Well, this family will know their own shapes, and so it's important for me to get the shapes correct. Even though there's no faces to be seen, they'll be able to tell who they are by the shapes, and also by the clothes that they're wearing and how they wear them. If you're only painting for yourself, or just to have a figure in the landscape, you don't need to be that accurate about what they look like. Because this is a commission for someone, I need to be accurate about all the details of the person. But you don't need to be, and I don't need to be, if we're just including them as a bit of something to compositional aid in our paintings. So I'm just having her other arm being hidden by a shirt a bit there. The other thing, of course, that women don't like when you're painting them is if you put on extra pounds, so just be careful of that. And some of my, I've had some requests to take a few kilos off as well when I've done some painting, so I'll try and remember that. So it's got a purpley kind of background. I didn't want it to be that purple, but that's okay because I can go back into that. And the shorts are a polka dot affair in a very deep navy too. So that's going on now. And here with the clothes, it's important to get those kind of fluty, wavy bits where it drapes. And so I'll be looking for those as I'm painting these. First I'm just getting the colour on, a base colour as I did with the skin. And then I'll be coming back and adding in some suggestions of drapery. So those shorts go around the legs like that, and then this other leg comes around like so. And the little daughter's hat's just going to come over the top of that. So here we go down with that leg, other shorts. Now the little girl's base colour. Their hats are a pinkish and purplish, so I'm going to lay in a pink sort of undercolour for this little hat here, which I'll be modifying as I go. That's going to be the base colour for the hat. And that's what I find it easiest to do with these figures and clothes, put in all the base colours and then start modelling them. Cat, and I'm just trying to overlap with Mum there a little bit. So overlapping Mum's skirt. And their little skirt, oh, I missed a bit of skin there. Oh. And the hand. Her top is riding up there, and so you can see a bit of her back. going to use a little bit of a pale pastel aquamarine as the base for this hat. It looks almost white, so I might actually mix that. I might put that on first and then mix some other colour with the that's the rim of the hat coming round. And then underneath the hat, it's much darker, so I'm actually going to use a darker colour to start off with that under the hat. And it's going to be a really, I'm going to take a little bit of blue and just add a tiny touch of phthalo blue to it. So it's a greeny sort of shade under the hat, but very deep. And here comes the shadow under the hat. I'm just going to follow that little rim all the way around underneath the hat. So there we've got the shadow under the hat. They have a floral pattern on there. So I'm just going to suggest this floral pattern, and I'm going to do it by just blobbing blobs on. Here you can see I'm blobbing on the blobs, and it's a navy sort of, and blues and navies over a floral over a white sort of background. And that's what I'm doing, just randomly blobbing on. I am pulling up in a sort of a mid-blue, pale kind of blue, along the edges of the clothes, so that I don't lose that. She's got a little skirt on the bottom of the swimsuit, and then the little knickers underneath. So just pulling that all the way down there, and then I'll just modify inside those lines. And there we go. So now it's just a little blobs. Taking some of the blobs out to the edges. Blobs down on her knickers, so play those bottoms. It's got a tiny little sort of white edge along the bottom of the frilly skirt there. Putting some of that in the little blobby bits up here. And it's just all mixing in together, and when you stand back from it, it has that sort of floral effect. I'm putting more of the darker areas down here. Everything's a bit darker down there because that's the bit that's in shade. And I'll continue around here, making it slightly darker because that's all in the shadow bit. But not forgetting to put in some little bits of white as well. And none of this is actually white, it's a pastel tint of aquamarine sort of colour, because the white would be too bright. I'm going to save the white for some tiny little bits of wavelets. So we're continuing to work on these. I've got the little girl's suit in, and now I just have to do her sibling's little suit. I'm just reinstating it first with a few little quick marks. so that I've got the outline of it. And a little Bandit bottoms. And again, I'm just colouring them in, you might as well say, with a base colour as I did the skin, just so that then I can start popping in the little flowers on top of it. See, her sister's lovingly got her little hand in there helping her around in the waves. And now there's quite a bit of white on this one. I'm just popping the white in the design. Then I'm going to pop in a couple of little bits of darker blues here and there. Just moving my brush around. Give the illusion of some sort of floral print there. You can go as far as you like with florals. You can get a little bit carried away, so I'm trying not to get too carried away, just to give a hint of and then I will be darkening them up slightly. For example, underneath here there's a little shadow because it's underneath her arm, so I'm just making that area a little bit darker, and that's the kind of thing that happens now. And just around underneath her little hat there, all that becomes a little bit darker. So I'm just looking for a few spots here. To make slightly darker, to give some form to the clothing. Mum, in the meantime, needs to have that worked up a little bit and put another layer on, and then she's going to need to have all the polka dots put on, because that is white polka dots, which is, I wish she'd been wearing something else, because white polka dots are not easy. I'm just putting another layer of ultramarine on over the top of that first layer. Any of those little brush marks that are left will kind of be varied by the time I put on the polka dots. It's because, as I said, I've got that glaze underneath, which is a gloss glaze, and then the paint wants to not stick to it in the same way it would as if it was a matte glaze. I tried to wipe it off as I went, but I didn't totally succeed. So there are the shorts. The top also needs a new coat, and I'm actually going to use some more burnt umber mixed in with the original one, just to give it a darker blacker kind of more solid look. And again, it needs, even though it's a solid colour shirt, it needs a little bit of variation, so some of the original layer will show through, and then this new layer. Children's hat is now going to get a little bit of work, and that's a kind of banded effect, so I need some darker areas of pink there. So I'm just going to take my little pink, pastel pink, and mix it with a tiny touch of purple, a little bit more pink, and then I'll see if I've got that the right amount, and that's just going to do some little circles, because the hats have got bands in them. So this again is how you can show the shape by making sure they go around the hat. And also to add in a little bit of shadow. So I'll be making that a little bit darker, that a little bit lighter right there. And sister has a deeper aqua colour, so I'm just going to use a little bit of the phthalo blue with the aquamarine to mix up a slightly darker version than she had. And that needs to be more aqua, but I'm going to leave that. I'm just going to put a little bit of purple in those colours. And I'll be coming back to that. Now I could work a little bit on the skin tones now. What I'm going to be doing is putting in some highlights, so down here, especially on the little inner of her foot there, out there on her hand. So these are the little highlight areas. That foot out there is going to get a little bit of highlight on it too. And then the same with Sis over here, a little highlight behind the foot. Mum has a nice highlight coming in on this leg where it's coming out, and she'll have a bit of a highlight coming down here too, and out on her toes there, a little one down the front of her leg there. This all dries darker than I'm actually painting it at the moment, so I'll probably have to come back and lighten it up again once we see how. So I've got some light areas on the figures now, and then what I need to do is put in some shadowed areas. So right under the dress, the edge of the skirt will be shadowed. The back of the legs here are going to be in shadow. I really need, I've made that a little bit, I just need to put a little bit of sand in there, so let's just pop in that bit of sand. That's better. That leg is probably a little bit wrong as, no, that looks okay. It's, that one comes out and then comes back like so. So I'm just shadowing up the areas that are mostly in the shadow. Here we go with this leg. A little line as it comes in there. And you can see I'm kind of shading them in a bit there. And the shadows are what give those legs form. If I made them too dark, I'll come back into them and lighten them up a little bit later. So this is the tricky part with figures, getting all your shadows in. That hand's going in quite dark because it's right in there, shadowed behind her. Now, Mum gets a little bit of shadow on her as well, down this arm, around this side of her neck. Underneath where her shorts come, I think I already started on that. Now the back of her leg there, we try to follow the contours. Because it's rounded, the shadow will come in a bit rounded there too. And then inner thigh. There are all sorts of ways you can get around it if you don't like painting faces. And here, the visor and the hats cover the faces, but they're still very recognisable for whom they are. Now, this hat, visor's got shadows on it too, so I just add a lot more yellow ochre to it and a touch of purple, and that just makes it a deeper colour for putting in the shadowed side. Here comes the shadowed side across. Of the visor. This area of Mum is quite pink. So I'm just going in again with the pinker colours around there. I'm trying not to make the cut off too dramatic there. I will warm those up with a tiny bit of more pastel yellow going into it to give that sense of light on there. It's okay to use your fingers. So a little bit of that coming down there. And I'm trying to blend that back a bit into the rest of the leg as well. But you can just take a bit of the neat yellow if you want to give a real highlight to some areas. And over on the here I will put a couple of little around her collarbone there. And little touches of light out here on this arm. You can see how light the yellow makes it. So there'll be little touches of that. Here as well. That's probably a bit too much, but that's okay. We can play with that as we need to. And I can go back and warm those up again later. I'm just working on that hair still, so it becomes warmer as we go up. And lighter. So we get up here and it's got some very light colours out. And pulling the light colours down into the darker areas there. And then a little bit of the dark going up through the ponytail there. So Mum's hair, pretty well done. It's dark around this side because it's in shade. And like I said before, I'm having slight trouble getting over that glazing, so I just have to put some on and then come back to it later. There we go. It's Dad and the boys. Dad wears a quite blue shirt, so I'm mixing up a kind of blue for him to put on his shirt, and we're just going to block that in, trying to work around everything else. There's one son's cap down there I need to be aware of. Just blocking in the main colour of the shirt, just as I did with Mum's outfit, and then I can come back and work on that as I need to. So again, Dad's is going to be a bit dark around this side because it's in shadow. And I'll put in a few little crease marks there. So that's the start of Dad going in. Behind him, just got to block out. I had in the original image of the sun there. I've moved them, so that's going out. So I'm just putting a little bit more of the water in there to try and block that out. And as I build up the colour on Dad's shirt there, it'll block out the rest of him where I had his face in. So a few tiny little highlights on the shirt. And then he's got shorts on which are quite navy. So it's got a sort of navy band down here. Navy band down there. And then it's got a pattern band. So again, I'm just going to make that abstract so that we don't get too one leg, other leg, and then He'll have another sort of navy band up closer to his shirt. I'm just running that round underneath the bottom of his shirt. And then there's some paler blues, sort of like his shirt kind of colours in this panel here, with a few lighter colours. And I'm just dabbing in, just to suggest that there's some sort of patterning going on there. And that's enough to suggest a pattern. Just want a little bit darker up here. Where it comes out from underneath his shirt. So I'm going to make that quite dark. Sort of a little shadow line underneath his shirt. And all that kind of runs together in the pattern. So let's put a few little pattern shapes in. Okay. So that's Dad's clothing, which we'll get some more little details added in later. Dad has on a straw hat, which I need to put in as well, so I'm going to put that in a strawy kind of colour, which is really going to be a yellow ochre. And then when I want it lighter, a touch of the lemon. So, in with Dad's straw hat. That's the rim of it there. So this is the bright, shadowed, sunny side of it. Then underneath, he's got quite a shadow part. And then quite a light bit going along the rim. And I'm going to make that quite light going down that part of the hat too. That'll get a little bit more detail later on. Now I want to put in the kids' clothes. And closest son has a red shirt, a red cap. So there's his cap gone in pretty quickly. Red shirt. And he has long sleeves too. They're obviously very sun conscious, which is great. Need to be these days. I'm just putting in a little bit of the other son has red shorts on. They're really a neon, which is hard to reproduce. I'm mixing the red with a touch of yellow to make them sort of orangey. They're not going to be really fluoro, which is what they like, but it's the closest I can get without having any fluoro colours. So there's his. And they might get a shot of, I've got some fluoro ink, so that might happen. And he's got a very dark top, which is black in fact. So that's going to go on now as a bit of, just going to mix up some purple and umber for that. And these are just little shapes. You can see I'm just really roughing them in, but they look like boy shapes. Get the sleeve out there. That's good. His cap is red as well. So in with a red cap. If you've got the shape wrong of anything, you can just modify it. So that shape, if that cap's a bit wrong, I'm just modifying it by putting a bit of cutting in with the negative space around it. And he needs to have a little bit of that cap coming up there, so I'm just taking that out using a wet brush. That's more cap-like. Okay, his shorts are a little combination of blue and sort of lime. They've got a pattern on them, so I'm going to go with the blue first. Just pull down some strokes to make the shorts, the swim shorts, and then I'm going to go into them with a bit of cad yellow light, which will make that limey kind of pattern in there. And so he's got his shorts on now. So they've got the colours that will identify them as them. I need to work on Dad's hat. And give that a bit of little straw colour around there, around the rim there. He's got some dark glasses on too. So I'm going to put in the dark glasses under there. At the same time, I'm just darkening up the under part of the hat. So Dad's face is quite in shadow, but we'll give him a little bit of colour as he comes out of the shadow there, so just a touch. He's actually rolling up his shirt there, so I'm just giving him a little touch of form on that arm by giving him a little touch of light coming down onto his hand there. And I still have to keep modelling that. Just want a sliver of light coming on his hand like that. His other hand is in there doing the work of rolling up a sleeve. There needs to be more variation in the shirt, so I'm just putting in a few bits of light on it. So there's a little bit of modelling on that shirt. The boys' shirts and tops and so on need a little bit of modelling too. I'm just going to put a little shadow on the back of that shirt and of the hat, the cap. And Dad has some little emblems on his arm, which are, there's one that's red, so I'm just going to pop that on because that'll be a little. He also has something on his hat, which looks like a little brown leather piece, so that's just going to go there. And then he has some darker navy. I think it's a flag on there. So just a couple of patches on his shirt there, which make it his shirt, not anybody else's. Around where his hand's emerging from it, there will be a little bit of shadow. So I'm putting that in. There'll be a little bit of shadow on that sleeve as well. And some little buttony shadows there where it buttons up. So they're starting to come alive there. I can give that even lighter. Bits on his shirt there. So now what remains to be done is to model the flesh tones a bit more, to add a little bit more brightness to this child at the back. So I'm actually going to pull out a bit of orange for that. It isn't orange, but I'm doing my best to make it something that I don't have a colour for. So let's give that a bit more hotness back there. That's more like it, yes. And then it can have a tiny touch of light shining on the front of his top there. Now I'm trying to give a little bit of a warm up to Mum on her skin tone. Oh, sorry, I'll do it up here. Just want to warm up some of these skin tones here. Got to put some shadows in and some reflections, and that will help things along too. So I'm going to start up here by putting a few little reflections of this little boy in. So there's some legs, those shorts, and the top. And then some shadows as well. So they'll get little shadows under their feet there. Not too much of a shadow. Just enough to set them into the beach there. It anchors them. And it's just a little mix of a purple and a little bit of blue. And I'm just scrubbing it on like so. Just to indicate that there are the people are anchored to the ground, and that's very helpful. Little dots everywhere, and they will need to have some little shadows areas on these clothes, these shorts particularly, to show the drape of it. For the moment I'm just putting on all the little dots, and then I'll give it a little glaze over to show which areas are in folds. So there's the dotty shorts. I've done that. They're white in the photo, but I've done them with aquamarine, pastel aquamarine, so that they're not too white. So that's the shorts. You can fiddle around as much as you like, and in here I've decided to go back in and put in a little bit more of the floral pattern. On the swimsuit for the girls. And then I've got to go back in and do those stripes. Forgot about that. Right. Touching up here to make it a little bit pinker. That's just running back into the shadows as well, so it's not quite so dark back there. And I'm running this back into the shadow area too, so it's not so brown. That's better. One thing I will put in at this stage is some figures out behind Dad out here. These are just to suggest some scale, and because they're out there against the red, sorry, the dark sky, I'm going to put them in a couple of lighter coloured people, maybe a little bit of an orange shirt on one of them. So it's just hints of people out there.